Hello students, welcome again to a new session at Educators Plus. I am Akarshi, your English faculty at Educators Plus. So students, I hope you are doing well and your studies are going really very good, and I hope you are enjoying my sessions, whatever sessions I'm bringing, whether it is theory session or PYQ session, you are enjoying it and getting a lot of substance to learn and mug up in the last days of your examination. Okay, so students, as you know that I am running the crash course on the YouTube channel, and we have completed with the British literature and the American literature, and from today I will be beginning, yes you are right, I will be beginning with the Indian literature. Okay, so I will be telling you the scenario of the Indian literature, also about the different authors and their works that have been asked in your exams in the previous years. Okay, so we will be starting with Indian literature today, and please stay tuned throughout the class and please maintain the discipline and ask your questions in the chat box. Okay, first let me know, am I visible and audible to you properly? Yes, please let me know. Am I visible and audible to you properly? Okay, so let's begin with the Indian literature. So first we'll study the scenario of the Indian English literature. ठीक है, पहले हम Indian English literature का scenario पढ़ेंगे. Fine. Okay, so we'll be studying about the scenario of the Indian English literature. So जैसे हमने British literature में पढ़ा था, British तो थी ही authority, जो हमारी English हम पढ़ते, that is the only British English. But how Americans also got free or got independence from the British rule and started their own literature. So as I told you, in the American literature as well, there were 13 colonies who were in direct authority with the British people. Okay? And how these 13 colonies fought against the slavery tradition, and how they were emerged as a victorious colonies from in the Civil War, and how Americans thought to start their own writings, own literature in English, and that's why whatever American English we have today is solely the product of the independence of the Americans. Okay, so the concept of American dream, okay, how American English is different from British English, ये सब मैंने आपको पिछले क्लास में, पिछले सेशन में बताया था. ठीक है, so in today's session we will be beginning with the Indian English literature. Just a second. Okay, so as you know that Indian writing in English has a very relatively short but highly charged history. Okay, so basically around 1793, Sheikh Deen Muhammad, who was a Bengali Anglo-Indian traveler, wrote a book called The Travels of the Deen Muhammad. So this was the first text that was written in English from the Indian origin. Okay? But most early Indian writings in English was non-fictional work in the initial days. And what are these non-fictional work? They used to be either biographies. They used to be either biographies, okay, or you can say the political writings. ठीक है, ये कौन कौन सी नॉन फिक्शनल चीजें होती थी? इट वाज आइदर बायोग्राफीज, और यू कैन से दैट there was something political papers or political essays that have been written at that point of time. And this began to change in the late 1800s, how when famous Indian authors, and who were these famous Indian authors? Raja Ram Mohan Roy, you can say Rabindranath Tagore, all Mulk Raj Anandi, they came into the existence and they wrote their works in mother tongue. And what was the mother tongue? Hindi was the mother tongue, and they used to actually write their works in that, and they began to try their hand at writing in English as well. Okay, and in the early 1900s, Rabindranath Tagore began translating the works from Bengali to English. And this is how this was the initial scenario of the Indian English literature. Okay, so these writers started first of all writing in their mother tongue, and later on they also start translating work from their origin or the native language to English. ठीक है, तो ये एक ओरिजिनल और यू कैन से दैट इनिशियल स्टेज था इंडियन इंग्लिश लिटरेचर का. फाइन. Is this clear? Any problem? Okay. So how this era began, then starting in the 1917, and who came in the 1917? Dhan Gopal Mukherjee, and he was a writer who started writing children's story that was set in India. So this was also a initial day work. Dhan Gopal Mukherjee, ठीक है, Dhan Gopal Mukherjee. Okay, he started writing in children's stories in English, and this was again a very initial work in the Indian history. ठीक है. Then what happened? Soon after, a new generation of Indian authors came who exclusively started writing in English, and they actually started hitting the bookshelf of most of the libraries and the bookstores of that point of time. Okay, and who were these writers? They were R.K. Narayan. ठीक है, R.K. Narayan started writing in English. And the first work he has written in English was Swami and Friends, and then Mulkraj Anand also came into play, who has written the famous work Untouchable. ठीक है. Later on, after Mulkraj Anand, Raja Rao also came into existence, and he has written a famous work at that point of time, which is known as Kanthapura. ठीक है. But what made these writers, okay, different from the Indian authors? Because these writers used to actually portray the reality of the society. Okay, they used to actually portray the contemporary man on the street. जो भी जैसे भी people used to जो existence था वहाँ पे, जैसे लोग वहाँ पे पाए जाते थे society में, they used to depict the reality in their work. So they were also famous for depicting realism in literature. ठीक है. And that's why these writers became famous. And there was also a very Indianness touch in their work, and in terms of words, they used to their style of writing. So normal words, okay, जो हिंदी words में use करते थे वो italicized होते थे पूरे उनके works में. So they used to bring the Indianness taste or Indianness touch also into their work, and this resonated with the men. But growing ranks of Indians basically reading English literature, and that's why by actually portraying the Indian men and by actually writing some Hindi words in their literature English, so that's why this literature became very much famous among the Indian reading society. ठीक है. And their works were the forerunners to the magnificent diversity of Indian writings in English that we see today. So whatever, so they were, you can say that they were our forefathers. What Indian literature or Indian works we see today, this was originated, or the germ was laid by these writers. Okay, and there were some also Indian writers who have their origin in India, but they never used to accept their nationality to be Indian. And who were their writers? They were also called as diaspora writers, like V.S. Naipaul, Bharti Mukherjee, who rejected the ethnic label of Indian writers from their name. Okay, so they never like to be called as Indian writers. So please remember V.S. Naipaul, okay, and Bharti Mukherjee. So these were some diaspora writers who rejected the Indian writers as a label from their name. And Mukherjee, this Bharti Mukherjee herself sees as an American, whereas this V.S. Naipaul prefers to be read as an artist from nowhere and everywhere. ठीक है. So he doesn't like to be called from some origin. He said, and I'm a writer from nowhere and everywhere. Any problem? Please ask in the chat box. If you are enjoying the session, please like the session as well. ठीक है. So V.S. Naipaul or Bharti Mukherjee, they rejected the labels. Please remember this. Also, how the Renaissance came into existence in the modern Indian literature. Like if you see in the English or the British literature as well, the previous years were known as the Dark Age. Why? Because there were a lot of wars, and there was not actually any emergence, or you can say flourishment of the literary works in literature. ठीक है. But when Elizabeth started ruling England, then a Renaissance period began. And what is the Renaissance significance in that period? The arrival of new forms of writing, art, the music, all these things came into existence, and that's why Renaissance period of British English is also known as the golden period or golden period of English. ठीक है? Similarly, a same kind of scenario was set in Indian English literature as well when the Renaissance in modern Indian literature begins. And how it begins, which writer started this Renaissance? It started by Raja Ram Mohan Roy. ठीक है? किसने Renaissance लाया था Indian literature में? That is Raja Ram Mohan Roy. He brought the Renaissance in in Indian English literature, or you can say there was a lot of arrival of the literary works, reading public were there. You can say the art form, all this actually people, or the Indianness touch was there in these arts. That's why people started cherishing it and started getting fond of it. Okay? And this Raja Ram Mohan Roy was a Bengali religious reformer, and he published journals in languages like English, Hindi, you can say Bengali as well, and Parsi as well. Okay? And his most popular journal is called as Sambad Kaumudi. Okay? Sambad Kaumudi was the most important journal of Raja Ram Mohan Roy. You should remember. But okay, Sambad Kaumudi. Okay, this is the most important journal which was written by Raja Ram Mohan Roy, and this actually made him famous as a writer in Indian English literature. And this journal covered topics from topics like freedom of press, introduction of Indianness, or induction of Indians into high ranks of service, and also it used to talk about the separation of the executive and the judiciary. Okay? And in collaboration with David Hare, he also has set a Hindu college. ये जो हम English in India पढ़ते हैं और हम higher education में ही पढ़ते हैं, so this was also Hindu college was also being set up by Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Fine. Is this clear? Are you enjoying the session? Then please like the session. Okay. So, because Indian literature is very important when it comes to literature, because आप Indians हो, आपको अपनी literature के बारे में तो पता होना ही चाहिए. So you should go depth into that, how it got evolved. Okay. Now then, after Raja Ram Mohan Roy, which is the other writer which came into existence, that is B.C. Chatterjee. Okay. And he has published the first novel in English, that is Raj Mohan's Wife. ठीक है. Raj Mohan's Wife actually was published by B.C. Chatterjee, and it is the first novel in English that was published. Okay? After Raja Ram Mohan Roy, B.C. Chatterjee came into existence, and he published the first work, that is Raj Mohan Wife. And this this book has also won several awards, and it actually won the permanent place in the history of Bengali literature, which is first novel in the mother tongue. Okay? It was Durgesh Nandini. So this was a Bengali literature novel which got also published during that period of time. Durgesh Nandini. Okay, are you getting it what I'm teaching? Okay, so later on, as I told you, this how the writers came into existence. First, like people started writing Deen Muhammad, then Rabindranath Tagore came, then Mulk Raja Anand Raja Rao, R.K. Narayan started writing, then Raja Ram Mohan Roy, and then how this B.C. Chatterjee has published the first novel in English, that is Raj Mohan's Wife. So this is how the history of Indian literature flowed, and I have given you a glimpse of how it has been, it came into existence. Okay, no problem, Devendra, good morning. Okay, so we have just started with the Indian literature. I have just given the introduction. So we'll be beginning with the first author, that is Sarojini Naidu. Okay, now Sarojini Naidu, as you know, she's also known as a Nightingale of India. Why? Because she was a very independent activist and a poet as well, and she began writing at the age of 12. So it's such an early age she started writing. And what are her works? The Golden Threshold, The Lotus, The Bud of Time, The Broken Wings, and The Feather of Dawn. So these are some of the important works which are written by Sarojini Naidu. And The Golden Threshold is the first collection of poems that was published by Sarojini Naidu. So it is a first collection of poems by Sarojini Naidu. Please remember that the Golden Threshold is the first collection of poems which were published by Sarojini Naidu. And then her later collection of poems come, such as The Lotus, which is actually addressed to Gandhi. ठीक है? It has been addressed to M.K. Gandhi, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. Please remember this, that Sarojini Naidu has addressed her poem collection The Lotus to Mahatma Gandhi. Fine? Okay. Then her later second volume of poems also arrives in the form of The Bird of Time. ठीक है? First volume कौन सी थी? The Golden Threshold. Second volume है The Bird of Time. Is it clear? Fine. Okay. Then her later works also got published, and The Broken Wings. This Broken Wing is also a work by Sarojini Naidu, and her last collection of poems also named as The Feather of the Dawn. Okay? This is the last collection of poems that was published by Sarojini Naidu, and it was actually published posthumously, that is after the death of Sarojini Naidu. And who published it? It was published by her daughter Padmaja. Okay? Padmaja was her daughter. Padmaja was the daughter of Sarojini Naidu, who published the work The Feather of the Dawn after the death of Sarojini Naidu. That's why it is the last collection of poems that was published under the name of Sarojini Naidu. Is this clear? Okay, so that's all about Sarojini Naidu. Let's move ahead. Let's study about Kamala Das. Now this Kamala Das is a very important writer when it comes to Indian literature. आप इसमें बहुत से research work भी लोग करते हैं for Kamala Das. So if you want to pick a research topic, you can pick Kamala Das. So she is known by her pen name Madhvi Das and Kamala Das. ठीक है? Madhvi Das and Kamala Das, it is a pen name. And Kamala Suraiya is the main name. ठीक है? Kamala Suraiya is the main name of Kamala Das, and Kamala Das and Madhvi Das are her pen name. And you know what is pen name? When the writer want to conceal her identity, or his or her identity, they use pseudonyms or the pen name. Fine? Is this clear? Okay. Now she was an Indian poet and a novelist as well, and Kamala Das was born in Kerala into a very you can say a literary household where both her mother and grandfathers were Malayali poets. So she was already born into a family of poets. So her mother and grandfathers all are Malayali poets, and she also got inspiration from them only. And what she is famous for? So basically Kamala Das is famous for, or you can say prominent for, her intimate and outspoken exploration of sexuality. Okay, she really used to put this boldness in her work. Okay, she actually gives a very intimate, or you can say outspoken description of sexuality, and she actually has created a stir with her autobiography My Story. Okay, so this My Story is her autobiography. Please remember that. This My Story is the autobiography of Kamala Das, and the boldness, the outspokenness, the outspoken dialogue which she has done in her autobiography My Story, it created a stir in the Indian history. Okay? And it was basically the book evoked very violent riots, you can say, or the reaction of admiration and criticism among the readers and critics. Okay, so it was both food for criticism and admiration. It was admired for a woman, actually an Indian woman especially, is actually exhibiting or depicting the passion, or you can say the inner thoughts in such a bold way. So it was a kind of admiration by the literary people, and it was a source of criticism, because at that point of time such boldness, such outspokenness is not actually expected by such females, especially an Indian female. Okay, so it was both a food of reaction and admiration. Okay, and it is a kind of a story which is chronologically set up, or you can say ordered, and it actually shows the inner thoughts of the narrator, and it has a linear narrative written in a very realistic style. उसमें सारा realism, the women जो भी harsh societies होती हैं, जो harsh treatment को दिया जाता है, atrocities होती हैं, and what the thoughts which are actually embedded in the heart of women and she is not able to express, All these things have been depicted in her autobiography. Okay, and in this book, Das actually also very recounts the trials of her marriage and her painful self-awakening as a woman and writer. Okay, so she didn't have a very good marriage or a happy marriage, and whatever thoughts she has embedded inside her, she actually portrayed in her writing. And this story, autobiography, which is an autobiography, also came as a self-awakening or a journey of self-discovery for Das, or you can say Kamla Das. Okay? And the entire account is written in the format of a novel. Please remember it. Yes, Maurya, good morning. Okay, so this was all about my story. So please remember that my story is an autobiography by Kamla Das, and she also won a Pen Asian Poetry Prize, and she's well known for her autobiography. She has also written a poem collection, that is Summer in Calcutta. So this was something, a first volume of poetry which was published under the name of Kamla Das, and that is Summer in Calcutta. It is the first volume of poetry, of poems. Please remember that. ठीक है, आपको first, second, third भी पता होना चाहिए कि which is the first volume, second volume. That's why I'm mentioning all these things. Okay, and her other volumes which appeared, like you can say the Siren was the one. Okay, which also won the Pen Asian Award or Poetry Award. ठीक है. Then is Alphabet of Lust. So from the name you can see that she was very outspoken in the depiction of sexuality, and this Alphabet of Lust is a novel. It is not a poetry collection, it is the novel. Okay, Ya Allah is also a kind of a poetry collection. You should remember that this is also a volume of poetry collection. Then the Sirens. Okay, the Sirens, I told you, Ya Allah, Summers in Calcutta, the Old Playhouse. Okay, one is the Old Playhouse. This is also a volume of poetry by Kamla Das. Please remember it. Okay, so this was all about Kamla Das, and she has been admired. Please remember, she has been admired for depiction of sexuality. And in the year 2009, the Times called her the mother of modern English Indian poetry. So she has also been called as the mother of modern Indian English poetry. She has been called as the mother of modern English Indian poetry. Okay? She has been called mother of English should come here, Indian should come here. English Indian poetry. And who called it? The Times has called Kamla Das the mother of modern English Indian poetry in 2009. Please remember it. Fine. So this was all about Kamla Das. I hope you got the glimpse of the writer Kamla Das and Sarojini Naidu. In case you have any problem or doubts, you can post in the chat box. I'll be answering your doubts. Okay, next is Rabindranath Tagore. Now this is a very important writer when it comes to Indian English literature, and as I told you, he started in the initial stage of Indian English literature. He started translating works from Bengali to English, and that's how the stir in the Indian literature has been created. And this Rabindranath Tagore was one of the most, we can say, the eminent modern Bengali poet and the author of the short fiction writing, who has contributed much in actually reshaping the Bengali literature. Okay, and his works are frequently noted for very rhythmic or you can say a lyrical style. ठीक है, जो उसका गीतांजलि है, ठीक है, so that is having a very lyrical and a rhythmic style, and he won a Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913. ये क्वेश्चन आपका नेट में पूछा जा चुका है. In which year Rabindranath Tagore has received a Nobel Prize? In 1913 he has received a Nobel Prize in literature. Is this clear? Please remember it, and please remember his writings are known for rhythmic and lyrical nature, and it was the first award that has been given to an Asian. Okay, so this Nobel Award, which was bestowed on the name of Rabindranath Tagore in 1913, it was the first award to be given to an Asian. Okay, and his major works are called like Reminiscence, Geetanjali, Gora, Ghere Bhere. So these are some of the initial works which he has written. Okay, so this Ghere Bhere is also in English known as Home and the World. Okay, ये घेरे भेरे, in English it is known as the home and the world. Is this clear? So these are some of the initial works which were written by Rabindranath Tagore, and Yeats, W.B. Yeats, which we have studied in British literature, he wrote the preface to the English translation of गीतांजलि. ठीक है, तो जो गीतांजलि का प्रीफेस है, जब वो इंग्लिश में ट्रांसलेट हुई थी तो उसका प्रीफेस किसने लिखा था? इट वाज रिटन बाय W.B. Yeats, who is a British writer, question of net, who has written the preface of the English translation of Gitanjali. It is W.B. Yeats. Please remember it. Okay. Then Tagore introduced new words and kind of a prose forms in the use of colloquial language in Bengali literature, and his first poems were written under the pseudonym of Sun Lion. So again, like other writers, in order to conceal his identity as a writer, writers use pen name or pseudonym. Similarly, Rabindranath Tagore in his initial works has used the pseudonym of Sun Lion. ठीक है, this is a pseudonym which was used by Rabindranath Tagore for his initial days. Okay, is this clear? Any problem? I hope you are enjoying the lecture, and in case you have any problem, please post in the chat box, and to mark your attendance, please like this session. Fine. Okay, so he has published the initial works under the pseudonym of Sun Lion, and next work is Chaucer Bali. Okay, so basically Tagore Chaucer Bali has been translated in English as Binodini. ठीक है, ये बंगाली वर्जन है, इसका इंग्लिश वर्जन है Binodini. Please remember this. Binodini is an English version of his work Chaucer Bali, and it is actually considered to the first modern novel in the history of English Indian literature. So it is the first modern novel. Please remember that it is the first modern novel in Indian literature. Okay, this is the first modern novel in the Indian English literature. Is this clear? Any problem? Okay, let's move ahead now. Next was Padmini. Now, Padmini was the first historical novel written in English. So, it is the first historical novel in English. और यू कैन से इंडियन इंग्लिश. ब्रिटिश की तो हम बात नहीं करेंगे बिकॉज ब्रिटिश तो बहुत पहले से चल रहा था, बट इन इंडियन इंग्लिश पद्मिनी वाज द फर्स्ट हिस्टोरिकल नॉवल रिटन. ओके, नेक्स्ट वर्क इज लाइक काबुलीवाला, पोस्टमास्टर, चित्रा. All these are works that was published after he has gained the importance or the recognition as a writer. Okay, so this Chitra is a play. Okay, this Chitra is a play by Rabindranath Tagore, and basically the play Rabindranath Tagore is a version of Kalidas Shakuntala. ठीक है, Kalidas is also a writer in Sanskrit literature. Okay, and this Chitra is the translation, or you can say the it's basically the version of Kalidas Shakuntala. ठीक है, so ये आपको याद रखना है. Kalidas Shakuntala. Fine. Okay, so please remember this कि Chitra is a play that is a version or the English version of the play Kalidas Shakuntala. Fine. Then the Galpa Gunja is a collection of short stories. Okay, and it actually contains around 84 stories about authors, surroundings and modern ideas. So it is a kind of Galpa Gunja is a Hindi word. In English it means bunch of stories. ठीक है, इसको इंग्लिश में क्या बोलते हैं? Bunch of stories. And around 84 stories are there in that, which talks about the modern society and the author's view on that particular society, and it also talks about the author's surroundings. Is this clear? Okay, then the last is the Last Harvest. So Last Harvest is again a collection of Tagore's painting exhibited on the 150th birth anniversary. तो जब टैगोर की 150th birth anniversary थी तो the Last Harvest is actually a collection of Tagore's paintings. So he was a painter as well, and his collection of painting is The Last Harvest. And please remember, it is actually posthumously, because कोई 150 साल के लिए नहीं जीता है, 150 days के लिए कोई नहीं जीता है, तो he has also not lived for 150 days, and उसकी 150th birth anniversary में ये चीज, the collection, The Last Harvest, is a collection of painting that has been exhibited on that particular occasion. Okay, is this clear? Any problem? This was all about Rabindranath Tagore. Please remember all the important works, all the insights which I have given about these works, and please make a note of it. Okay, so let's move ahead to a new writer now, R.K. Narayan. Again, a very important writer from the examination point of view, because R.K. Narayan से भी आपके काफी questions पूछे जाते हैं in your examination. ठीक है, so now R.K. Narayan, you should first know that he was born in Madras. ठीक है, कहाँ born हुआ था? In Madras. He was born in Madras, which is Chennai nowadays. Okay, and R.K. Narayan का full name क्या था? राशीपुरम कृष्ण स्वामी नारायण स्वामी. ठीक है, कृष्ण स्वामी अय्यर नारायण स्वामी, what was his name? So उसका इतना बड़ा नाम था, तो in short form हम उसको क्या बोलते हैं? R.K. Narayan. And he is best known for his work set in the fictional South Indian town of Malgudi. Okay, जैसे हमने देखा था कि थॉमस हार्डी ने अपना एक इमेजिनरी टाउन बना रखा था, वेसेक्स. ठीक है, so similarly R.K. Narayan has also created an imaginary society or imaginary place, which is a South Indian town of Malgudi. Please remember it. Question of net में question आ चुका है. Who has been credited for creating a Mal society or imaginary location named as Malgudi? It is R.K. Narayan. Is this clear? Please remember that. Okay, and in his initial work, this town has been depicted. Okay, and he is one of the 3 leading figures of early Indian literature on English. तो मैंने आपको बताया था कि after say Deen Muhammad, some writers started writing in that initial period, and one was R.K. Narayan, then Raja Ram Mohan Roy, so and Mulk Raj Anand. ठीक है, sorry, Raja Rao and Mulk Raj Anand. Mulk Raj Anand, Raja Rao, and R.K. Narayan, these were the 3 entities or the leading figures in the early Indian literature. You should remember it. Fine. And is credited with the bringing of the, you can say, a new form or a new genre to the rest of the world. Fine. So that's why R.K. Narayan is again a very important writer of Indian English literature. Also, please remember that Narayan broke through with the help of his mentor and a friend Graham Greene. Okay, so in the early stage, Indian writers were not accepted. ठीक है, उनके जो works थे, they were not accepted by the publishers to publish their works. ठीक है, so उनको recognition मिलता कैसे? So that's why some aid was there. So R.K. Narayan को help किससे मिली थी? From his mentor, or you can say a friend, Graham Greene. Okay, and he was instrumental in getting publishers for Narayan first 4 books. Please remember it कि Narayan has published his 4 initial books with the help of Graham Greene. Graham Greene के बारे में हमने पढ़ा था when we were studying about the British literature, the power and the glory and everything. We have studied about the setting of his novels. So please remember that Graham Greene helped Narayan to publish his initial works. Okay. Now, then in the first 4 novels, like Swami and Friends, ठीक है, Swami and Friends, the English teacher, the Bachelor of Arts, Mr. Sampath, the financial expert, the vendor of sweet, the painter of science, and Malgudi Days. इसमें सब में Malgudi है as a imaginary location. So all these stories have been set in an imaginary town, Malgudi. And उसका first work क्या था? What is the first work of R.K. Narayan? That is Swami and Friends. Swami and Friends is the first work of R.K. Narayan, जिसमें Malgudi was a setting. So all these novels, all these works, Swami and Friends, the Bachelor of Arts, the English teacher, Mr. Sampath, the financial expert, the vendor of sweets, the painter of science, and Malgudi Days, all of them has been set in a fictional town of Malgudi. Is this clear? Any problem? Okay. So, so this was all about R.K. Narayan. let's study some of his work. So first of all, let's study about Mr. Sampath. Okay, so this Mr. Sampath is there, and so Mr. Sampath is a kind of a again it was set in Malgudi, and it is actually adapted into a movie. It was adapted into a movie, or you can say film. So Mr. Sampath was the title of the Hindi movie, and Miss Malini was the title of Tamil movie. ठीक है, so Mr. Sampath जो मूवी करी गई थी इसको कन्वर्ट लिसन वर्क को, तो हिंदी में उसका नाम था मिस्टर संपत, एंड मिस मालिनी was a name given to this particular work in Tamil. Please remember it. These are very intricate details about the works of R.K. Narayan. Okay, and in this particular work, basically Mr. Srinivas is the editor and Mr. Sampath is the painter. Yeah, okay, sorry, printer. He was a printer. Okay, and they have brought a journal into existence together, and these two figures are very contrasting to each other, and these characters are large great partnership that makes the banner. Banner is the name of the journal which they have collaborated to publish a very, you can say, the cynosure of the eyes of Malgudi. Okay, so they have, so इसमें किसकी बात करी गई है? This Mr. Srinivas was there, Mr. Sampath was there. Mr. Srinivas was the you can say editor, and Mr. Sampath was the printer, and they collaborated to bring a journal named as Banner, and with the collaboration they have brought this journal Banner into into a huge success, and it is came to be known as a cynosure of the eyes of Malgudi. ठीक है, तो इस पे किस journal की बात करी गई है? Banner. And please remember the main character, Mr. Srinivas and Mr. Sampath. Okay, is this clear? Okay, next let's talk about the financial expert. Again, the financial expert is a very again a famous work of R.K. Narayan, and it takes place again in the imaginary place of Malgudi. Okay, and the central character in this book is a financial expert, Margaya, who offers advice to all the fellow, you can say that, town people from under his position in the banyan tree. So he was used to consider himself to be a Mahatma kind of a figure, or you can say God or a dean, which actually used to give advice to people. He was a great advisor. So he used to sit under a tree, a banyan tree in this town of Malgudi, and he used to give advice to the people about the financial topics. ठीक है, and what was the name of this financial expert? It was Margaya. Margaya. So this was the name of the main character. Is this clear? Okay, let's move ahead to the vendor of sweets. So vendor of sweets, again it has been set in Malgudi. ठीक है, so vendor of sweets has been set in Malgudi. So this thing you have to just remember, and you have to just remember the title, because ज़्यादा detail में questions नहीं आते हैं. Then comes the painter of science. Again you have to remember that it has been set in Malgudi. ठीक है, Malgudi days तो आपको नाम ही, ये दूरदर्शन में आता भी था शो Malgudi days, जिसमें आपको small anecdote stories दिखाई जाती थी, which has been set in a town of Malgudi. Okay, so if you used to watch Doordarshan in your childhood, then you must have definitely watched Malgudi days, because I used to love that show really. Which so can you just tell me in the chat box, have you watched Malgudi days in your childhood? Please let me know, have you watched Malgudi days in your childhood? Have you been acquainted with the writings of R.K. Narayan, or have you seen the vision or the version of pictorial version of Malgudi days, or a town of Malgudi? Yes. Okay, so if not, then you can just go on internet also, or you can say YouTube, there must be available, so you can just have a glimpse of how the story used to fall in that work. ठीक है, next is the guide. The guide is a very important work, you should remember it, and इसको please अब read करना the guide को, because ये बहुत important work है, and इससे questions भी आपके exams में पूछे जाते हैं. Now, this novel describes the, you can say, transformational journey of the main protagonist. And who was the protagonist? The main protagonist was Raju. Okay, and he was a tour guide. And later on he became a very spiritual guide. So tour guide से वो spiritual guide की जो उसकी journey थी, जो transformation था, that has been shown in this particular work, the guide. Okay, and this was actually later on, as a spiritual guide, he became a greatest holy man of India. And his other characters of the work was Rosie, the dancer with whom Raju has fallen in love. And Rosie, at that, when Raju has fallen in love with Rosie, she was already married, and her husband name was Marco, okay, who was an archaeologist, and who didn't approve of the relationship between Raju and Rosie. So Raju was a tour guide, and this Marco and Rosie came to visit that particular town, and they came in contact with Raju. And Raju, after spending some time with the couple, came to know that the relationship was not good, because Marco was an archaeologist, so he was always busy with his work, while Rosie was actually sitting in the room idle. And he interacted with Rosie and fallen in love with her, and which Marco, when came to know, he didn't approve of their love. Okay, and how this afterwards, being a tour guide, he became a spiritual guide. You should read the novel The Guide to know the glimpse of the story. Fine. Next is Waiting for Mahatma. Okay, so Waiting for Mahatma is also important work, and you should remember that this work is highly being categorized on the ideals of Mahatma Gandhi. Okay, and it is actually the fictional set in the fictional southern town, that is Malgudi. And in this, the main character is Sri Ram, which is actually a very follower of Gandhi, and his ideals has been shown in this particular work. Okay, and here the backdrop of the story was Mahatma Gandhi's Quit India movement. Please remember, the backdrop story of the Waiting for Mahatma is Mahatma Gandhi Quit India movement. Mahatma Gandhi Quit India movement is the backdrop. Is this clear? Okay. Next is Painter of Science. Again, it is a clash between the modern and the ancient society. So please read the Painter of Science also. And okay, so we have covered all the works. So please, these are some important works of R.K. Narayan, and please make a reading of these most of the works, because ye aapke again R.K. Narayan is a very important author when it comes to Indian English literature. So please keep a note of all these points and their works, and please make a reading of it. The setting, the main characters, and what was the clash or what was the theme of all these works. Okay, let's move ahead now. Next is Mulk Raj Anand. As I told you, Raja Rao, Mulk Raj Anand, and R.K. Narayan were some initial writers, or you can say the three pillars of Indian English literature. So another, we have studied about R.K. Narayan. Now we'll be studying about Mulk Raj Anand. So Mulk Raj Anand again is an Indian novelist writing in English, who made his name with his novel Untouchable. Okay, so Untouchable आपने maybe अपने UG और PG में पढ़ा होगा, because it is again a very important work from Indian literature point of view. And this work Untouchable recounts a day in the life of a street sweeper. And what was the name of the sweeper? Bakha. Bakha was the name of that sweeper. He's the main character, and he's an untouchable. Okay, and he has been his story has been portrayed in this particular work. Also, you should remember that from where this story was inspired. So this Mulk Raj Anand's Untouchable has been inspired by his own personal incident of his aunt's experience, which he had with a Muslim woman and was treated as an outcast by his family. Okay, and the plot of this book, which is Anand's first novel, considered the first novel, it revolves around the experiences or the argument of eradicating the caste system. So you should remember, basically it targets the caste system, that caste should not be the thing in the society to put barricades. Okay, and everyone should be treated equally. So this was kind of a work written to abolish the caste system which prevails in the society, and depicts a day in the life of a Bakha, who was the young sweeper. Is this clear? Okay. Then the old woman and the cow. Now you should remember that this novel is the first novel where we have a central character as a woman. Okay, so this is the first novel of Mulkraj Anand to have central character, to have woman as a central character. Please remember this point. The Old Woman and the Cow is the only novel of actually the Mulkraj Anand to have a central character as a woman. And who was that woman? Gauri. Gauri was the main woman of this, or the main protagonist of this particular work. Gauri is the main protagonist of this work, and it is shows the life of Gauri, who was a young peasant, young woman, and she was married to a Panchi of Chota Peoplen. Okay, and this novel traces the sufferings, her coming back to her native village, and then how her mother and her you can say Seth Jairam sold her to Seth Jairam Das. So this was a kind of a tragedy, or tragic sequence or tragic experience that was there in her life, and that the novel recounts her journey from this tragic experience. And towards the end of this work, she emerged as the symbol of new womanhood. So she came out victorious, and that's why she became a symbol of new womanhood. Okay, so please remember this. Gauri was actually the symbol of new womanhood. Please remember this point. Is this clear? Are you getting what I'm teaching? Okay. Okay, so let's move ahead. Let's study about some other works of Mulkraj Anand. So his major work, which is actually Kuli. Okay? After that, Kuli has been written, and this novel Kuli gives a commentary upon the caste system. Again, touches upon the the theme of caste system, and it narrates the story of a 14-year-old boy Munnu. वहाँ पे बाखा था, यहाँ पे मुन्नू है. ठीक है? Just speak the spelling. Okay, so here again untouchable was there. In untouchable, that is Baka, and Kuli also deals with the caste system, and again there's a boy. It recounts the story of a 14-year-old boy Munnu and his plight due to poverty and exploitation, which has been basically aided by the social and the political structures in place. So again the caste system is there कि कैसे कैसे आपको ना treatments मिलते थे with the higher authorities or with the people who are or above caste. ठीक है? So this again recounts the story of Munnu. Okay, next work is we have talked about untouchable. Now the village. Okay, so this village is again important work, and this is come under the trilogy. ठीक है? The village, across the black waters, and the sword of sickle. So this is actually a trilogy written by Mulkraj Anand. It is a trilogy, and trilogy में कौन सी parts है? The village, across the black waters, and the sword and the sickle. Okay, it comes under trilogy, which has been written by the Mulkraj Anand. Now this village, it is a novel which revolves around the character named Lal Singh, which is who was a peasant in Punjab. ठीक है? And his actually ancestors, or you can say he goes against the social norms of the village, and his he was actually rejected from the society because he went against the social norms, and he went to the army, and then he culminated his return to the village. ठीक है? So he was an outcast. उसने social reforms को reject करा, disown करा. Then he later on he joined army, and then he came again back to village. So ये पूरी journey उसकी लाल सिंह की, who was a peasant in Punjab, has been traced in this work, The Village. Okay, next is Across the Black Waters. Now these, you can see that how this kind of a the atrocities or the backdrop of the Indian society has been depicted in the work of Mulkraj Anand. ठीक है? Similarly, in the work Across the Black Water, it chronicles the life of the struggles of the, or you can say, rise from the bottom of the Indian society. And in the background of this particular novel is Indian fight for independence. Please remember that. ठीक है? जो यहाँ पे जो अक्रॉस द ब्लैक वाटर में द बैकड्रॉप वाज इंडियन फाइट फॉर इंडिपेंडेंस. प्लीज रिमेंबर दैट. क्योंकि आपको ये सब क्वेश्चंस आपके एग्जाम्स में आते हैं कि लाइक किसमें इंडिपेंडेंस हैज बीन बीन शोन, किसमें देयर वाज अ व्हिच नॉवल ऑफ मुल्कराज आनंद शो इंडिपेंडेंस और हैव अ बैकड्रॉप ऑफ इंडिपेंडेंस. और ये क्वेश्चंस भी आपके आ चुका है प्रीवियस ईयर्स में कि विच ऑफ द फॉलोइंग नॉवल ऑफ मुल्कराज आनंद हैज अ बैकग्राउंड ऑफ इंडियन इंडिपेंडेंस दैट इज अक्रॉस द ब्लैक वाटर. And this book is the only Indian English novel that is that is in the World War I and portrays the experience of Lalu. ठीक है, Lalu was a main character who उसका experience बताया गया है. इसमें दो चीज़ डिपेक्ट करी गई है. एक तो इंडियन इंडिपेंडेंस फॉर इंडियन फाइट फॉर इंडिपेंडेंस डिपेक्ट कराया गया है. एंड दिस नॉवल इज द ओनली नॉवल इन इंडियन इंग्लिश हिस्ट्री दैट हैज़ अ बैकड्रॉप ऑफ वर्ल्ड वॉर 1. ठीक है, इसमें वर्ल्ड वॉर 1 भी डिपेक्ट करा गया है. ओके, यस देवेंद्र, आई एम डिस्क्राइबिंग द सेम. आई हैव टोल्ड यू द मेन कैरेक्टर्स ऑल्सो. विलेज में लाल सिंह था, अक्रॉस द ब्लैक वाटर्स में लालू वॉज द मेन कैरेक्टर. ठीक है, सो दिस वॉज दैट्स व्हाई आई एम टेलिंग यू द इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट्स ओनली. And this Lalu wants to actually you can say that reclaim the piece of the land which has family has lost to the zamindars. Okay, and how he has claimed receives the land, and when he returns to basically his village after the war, he finds that his family destroyed and his parents are dead. So this was how the tragic affair or the tragedy of the life or in the life of Lalu कि उसको एक reclaim land करना था that was actually lost to the authorities during the war, and when he came back to his native village he found that his parents are dead and the family has been destroyed. ठीक है, this was all about the across the black water. Now the sword and the sickle, इससे क्वेश्चन आपका आ चुका है. This you should remember the story of the sword and the sickle deals with the rise of communism. ठीक है, and George Orwell, who was a writer of the 20th century, who was actually the friend of Anand, suggested the title. ठीक है, please remember this. ये आपका क्वेश्चन आ चुका है कि George Orwell was a person or he is a writer of the 20th century British literature who has suggested the title to Anand, and he was a friend of Anand and he suggested the title Sword and the Sickle to Anand. And please remember the story of Sword and the Sickle deals with the rise of communism. It deals with the rise of communism. So I have told you the important characters and the backdrop of the story because इससे भी बहुत ज़्यादा questions आपके आते हैं backdrop से. So that's why I have told you कि इसमें independence की बात हुई है. This is the only novel which has been set in World War I. Okay, and the village is also the story which shows a plight of a peasant man, that is Lal Singh. Lal Singh. Across the black waters में Lalu was the main character. Fine, is this clear? Any problem? So this was all about Mulkraj Anand. So I have told you about the main works. The main important work that has जिससे deep में questions पूछे जाते हैं वो untouchable है. Untouchable को आपको read करना है, सब चीज़ उसको अच्छे से समझना है. ठीक है, तो Untouchable सबसे ज़्यादा main important work है. इनका आपको जो 3 ट्रायलॉजी मैंने बताई है इसका सिर्फ आपको बैकड्रॉप्स और मेन कैरेक्टर्स आपको याद रखने हैं. एंड प्लीज रिमेंबर द स्वॉर्ड एंड द सिकल हैज बीन सजेस्टेड बाय जॉर्ज ऑरवेल टू आनंद. ओके, एंड द ओल्ड वुमन एंड द काउ इज द ओनली नॉवल ऑफ आनंद, नॉट द फर्स्ट, ओनली नॉवल ऑफ आनंद टू हैव अ फीमेल character as a central character. And who was the central character? It was Gauri. And in the novel she emerged as a symbol of new womanhood. Is this clear? Any problem? So this was all about Mulkraj Anand. Okay, and ये सारे works important है, so please make a note of it. Next is Raja Rao. As I told you, there were 3 pillars: R.K. Narayan, Mulkraj Anand, and next is Raja Rao. Now this Raja Rao was born in Karnataka, and his first novel which created a stir in English literature or Indian English literature is Kantapura. ठीक है, Kantapura is a main novel which has created a stir in the Indian English literature. And it is Kanthapura basically is an account of independence movement seen from the perspective of a grandmother who actually used to live in a South Indian village. ठीक है, Indian independence, again the reference of Indian independence is there. ओके एंड ये इंडियन इंडिपेंडेंस कौन डिस्क्राइब करता है? इट हैज बीन डिस्क्राइब्ड विद द पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ अ ग्रैंडमदर हु यूज्ड टू लिव इन अ स्मॉल साउथ इंडियन विलेज. ओके एंड दिस वर्क कांतापुरा रिकॉर्ड्स द इन्फ्लुएंस ऑफ गांधीयन आइडल्स एज वेल. ठीक है, गांधी का भी यहाँ पे रेफरेंस दिया गया है, प्लीज रिमेंबर. गांधीयन आइडियल्स को भी शो करा गया है यहाँ पे. ठीक है, in this particular work Gandhian ideals has been shown in the work Kanthapura, and it actually and on which place it has been shown? It has been shown on a remote South Indian village where this old or grandmother used to live during the years of the Indian independence movement. And it is basically a story of Gandhian idols, charismatic effect on the village, the but the Mahatma which the people used to refer in that particular story does not appear in the novel. So only the ideals, the aerial picture of Gandhi ideals and Gandhi ideology or Gandhian effect on the village has been given, but the Mahatma in this particular work does not appear in the novel. And who was actually came as a Mahatma in the story? His spokesperson, also basically which actually described the Murti who follows the master by fasting and preaching. So there was a the disciple of Mahatma Gandhi, Murti, who used to actually preach this Mahatma idols to the village people. Okay, and how he used to preach by fasting and preaching against the caste system. So he was the one who actually denounced the caste system in Indian society, and he actually taught that everybody is equal, and he used to preach the Mahatma Gandhi idol. Also, please remember this novel is narrated in the form of Shlata Purana. ठीक है? So this is also called as Shlata Purana. This Kanthapura. So it has been recited in the form of that. And who has recited this novel? It was recited by an old woman who used to live in the village named as Achaka. Achaka was the name of the village. And this story, this novel is also have a reference of Hari Kathas. Okay? And Hari Kathas has also been a very famous form of storytelling in those days, which used to actually shows the stories of God. Okay, the traditional form of storytelling tha ye, and it used to recite the stories of Hari, that is God, and it is actually practiced in the village. So this kind of tradition of Hari Kathas has been shown in this work as well. ठीक है, so please remember Hari Kathas को भी दिखाया गया है इसके नॉवल में. Hari Kathas, so which is on what is Hari Katha? Hari Kathas actually is a story of God. हरि, हरि का मतलब क्या होता है? गॉड. तो गॉड की स्टोरीज जो आप डिपिक्ट करते हो और आप सुनाते हो ट्रेडिशनल फॉर्म पे, दैट इज द काइंड ऑफ अ रिचुअल हैज बीन शोन इन दिस novel. ठीक है, and one of the Hari Katha man which is actually known as Jaya Machar. Jaya Machar was a man of who used to recite please check the spelling. So Jaya Machar is a man who used to recite the Hari Katha in the novel, and he narrated a Hari Katha based on the Gandhi and his ideals. So Gandhi ideals so पूरे novel में it has been preached. Okay, first of all Jaya Machar, Murthy used to preach, then a Hari Katha man came, Jaya Machar. He also used to recite Hari Kathas based on the Gandhi ideals. ठीक है, and in this particular work the narrator was arrested because of the political propaganda instilled in the story. ठीक है, so political again the caste system को target करा गया है. So it is again a political propaganda which has been targeted by Raja Rao, and he has been arrested for this particular work. Please remember that. Okay, next Kanthapura, and एक उसका एक और वर्क है The Serpent and the Rope. ठीक है, please remember. एक उसका और वर्क है The Serpent and the Rope. इससे भी क्वेश्चंस आते हैं या मैच द कॉलम्स आ जाते हैं. प्लीज मैच द writer with the work. So ये भी एक बार आ चुका है आपके नेट में कि serpent in the rope was actually matched with Raja Rao. And this particular work tells the story of a young Brahmin intellectual and his French wife. So he was a Brahmin Indian intellectual and he married to a French woman. And so it actually tells the story of this particular man with his French wife. And it is a kind of a semi-autobiographical novel as well, which actually recounts the search for spiritual truth in Europe and in India. Again, the self-discovery has been portrayed, a theme of self-discovery is there. So that's why this work has been also been considered as a semi-autobiography. This work has been considered as a semi-autobiography. Fine. And it actually tells the story of a young Brahmin and a French wife, and it shows a theme of spiritual discovery or the search of spiritual truth in Europe and in India. And it is actually one of the finest Indian prose style or prose work that has been written by Indian author in the initial days. And this work, The Serpent and the Rope, has won Raja Rao a साहित्य अकादमी अवार्ड एज वेल. ठीक है, सो बेसिकली इस वर्क के लिए उसको साहित्य अकादमी अवार्ड भी मिला था. Please remember that. So this is the very important work from the examination point of view. Fine. Okay, so this was all about Raja Rao. Let's come back to the last writer, that is Shobha Day. Now, Shobha Day की आपने works पढ़ा होगा, and she is sometime into news as well. Literary JLF में भी आ चुकी है, जो अभी जयपुर literary festival चल रहा था 19 to 23rd of January. So she has come there as well. Okay, so she is a very important Indian novelist which was born in India, and she is famous for her depiction of, you can say that, socialities and the intimacy in her works of fiction. So काफी ज़्यादा bold scenes होते हैं, bold outspokenness होती है, and socialites को, elite class को she depicts in her work. Okay, and for which she has come to be known as the Jackie Collins of India, because she used to depict some elite class, socialites को depict करती है, intimacy को depict करती है, bold उसका outspoken होता है. So that's why she is known as the Jackie Collins of India. Please remember this very important point. She is called as Jackie Collins of India. And reason भी आपको मैंने बता दिया क्यों बोला जाता है, because उसके works में काफी intimate narration होता है and the socialites को वो depict करती है. ठीक है, that's why she is known as Jackie Collins of India. And she has basically founded 3 magazines. And what was the name of this magazine? Stardust, Society and Celebrity. ठीक है, तो ये जो उसकी बहुत ही important magazines हैं that are famous by Shobha Day, that is Stardust magazine, Society magazine and the Celebrity one. Please remember the name of these magazine. Okay, and next is that she has written an autobiography as well, and the name of her autobiography was Selective Memory. ठीक है, जो अभी Selective Memory देख रहे हो title, it is an autobiography. किसकी ऑटोबायोग्राफी है? शोभा डे की ऑटोबायोग्राफी है सिलेक्टिव मेमोरी. प्लीज रिमेंबर द नेम. अगेन द क्वेश्चन हैज बीन आस्क्ड कि किसकी ऑटोबायोग्राफी है? सिलेक्टिव मेमोरी इज एन ऑटोबायोग्राफी ऑफ शोभा डे. ओके, and what are her other works? Sisters, Snapshots, Strange Obsessions. So these are some of the works which has been written by Shobha Day. Only the name you have to remember. You don't have to go in the depth, because इतने ज़्यादा depth में Shobha Day से questions नहीं पूछे जाते. बस आपको important points क्या याद रखना है? इसको जैकी कॉलिंस ऑफ इंडिया बोला जाता है. उसकी ऑटोबायोग्राफी का नाम क्या है? Selective Memory. And what are the title of her other works? Sisters, Snapshots and Strange Obsession. ठीक है, इससे ज़्यादा आपसे एग्जाम में नहीं पूछा जाता, तो प्लीज रिमेंबर दीज पॉइंट्स. फाइन. I hope you have enjoying the lecture. If you are enjoying it, please like the session. Okay, and this was all about the Indian English literature next class में today is Wednesday, right? On Friday I will be coming with some different authors of Indian English literature, so please stay tuned for that session as well. I hope you have got a lot of insight into the Indian English literature, and I have also explained that how this thing has emerged, Indian English कैसे existence में आई थी. So please, those who have missed the starting part, please rewatch the video again to get a better insight of the topics which we have covered. Okay, so if you have enjoyed the session, please like the session, please comment your views about the session, and please share these sessions with your friends, because आप अगर share करोगे तो your friends can also prepare well for the coming examination. Okay, and also students, please stay tuned for the 1 p.m. session. I have brought some very amazing questions, or the previous year's question that have been asked from the Indian English literature unit. So we'll practice that, and I'll give you the insight of the various writers which we are, even if I have not covered in this lecture, I will be covering in that particular lecture. Okay, so stay tuned and see you at 1 p.m.